Hi, my name is Michael, I'm 42 years old, and if you had asked me a year ago what I thought about marriage, I would have told you it was about hard work, loyalty, and finding comfort in another person's arms. I've been working in construction most of my life, starting out as an apprentice when I was barely 20, eventually moving my way up to running small crews. I've always been proud of what I do, even if it means my hands are rough, my back hurts more often than not, and I come home with dust in my hair and aching bones. It's honest work, and for a long time, I thought that honesty stretched across every part of my life, including my marriage. I met my wife, Lavra, when I was 30. She was 28 at the time, working as a nurse. We met at a friend's barbecue, one of those summer afternoons where the beer flows a little too easily and everyone is in a good mood. She had this laugh that cut through the noise, sharp and warm at the same time, and I remember thinking, I hadn't heard anything better in years. We started talking over paper plates of burgers and potato salad, and by the end of the night, I had her number scribbled on a napkin. I kept that napkin for years, tucked into a drawer in my nightstand, even after we married. Our life together wasn't glamorous. We bought a modest house on the edge of town, one of those single-story places with a small yard that always needed mowing. We had 2 kids, a boy and a girl, now 12 and 10. I worked long hours, sometimes 6 days a week, and she worked nights at the hospital, which meant a lot of juggling schedules and quick kisses in the hallway as one of us left and the other came home. Still, I thought we were doing all right. I thought we were a team. The first crack showed up so small I barely noticed. It was about 2 years ago, when Lavra started being on her phone more often. At first I chalked it up to work, since nurses have group chats, shift changes, emergency calls. But then I'd catch her smiling at her screen in a way she didn't smile at me anymore. Or she'd tilt the phone just slightly away if I walked by. I told myself not to be paranoid. I trusted her. After all, she had been my rock for over a decade. I don't know what finally made me suspicious enough to check. Maybe it was the night she said she was picking up an extra shift, but when I called the hospital to ask her something about our son's school form, they told me she wasn't scheduled. My heart didn't just sink. It collapsed into some dark hole I didn't know existed. That night I couldn't sleep, so while she showered, I looked at her phone. My hands shook the whole time. I hated myself for it, hated that I had become the kind of husband who snoops. But what I found, it gutted me. There were messages, hundreds of them. Some were flirty, some were downright filthy, and none of them were meant for me. His name was Ryan, someone she had apparently met through a mutual friend. They'd been talking for months, maybe longer. Pictures, plans, little jokes that only belong between people who are in that intoxicating early stage of something new. And then there were the hotel reservations hidden in her email. She hadn't just been texting him. She had been meeting him. I can't put into words the way that discovery changed me. It was like every moment of the last 12 years had been rewritten in an instant. Every smile she had given me suddenly felt like a lie. Every time I'd worked overtime to provide, thinking I was building a future for us, felt like I had been a fool hammering nails into a house that wasn't even mine. When she came out of the shower that night, hair wrapped in a towel, humming to herself, I just stared at her. I didn't confront her right then. I couldn't. My throat was tight, my hands were ice cold, and I felt like if I opened my mouth, it'd just start screaming and never stop. So I swallowed it down. I told myself I needed proof, a plan, something more than just a handful of texts and assumptions. Over the next few weeks, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started keeping track of her shifts, checking receipts, even driving by the hospital parking lot to see if her car was there. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. I felt like a detective in my own life, gathering evidence for a crime I never wanted to solve. And the worst part, she was still kind to me through all of this. She'd ask me about my day, rub my shoulders if I looked tired, laugh with the kids. She acted like nothing was wrong, like we were still the same family we had always been. And maybe that was the cruelest thing of all, that she could live 2 lives, seamlessly, without letting the cracks show until I went looking for them. I don't know how long I could have gone on pretending I didn't know, but something inside me snapped one Thursday night. She said she was staying late to cover for a coworker, and after the kids were asleep, I just sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold it, but I pulled up the email again, the one with the hotel confirmation. It was for that night, a room at some mid-range place off the highway, nothing fancy, just discreet enough. My chest tightened until I thought I was going to pass out. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, every second louder than the last. I don't even know what possessed me, but I grabbed my keys and drove. It was about 20 minutes from our house, and the whole way there, my brain was screaming at me to turn back. Don't do this, Mike. If you don't see it, it isn't real. You can still go home, tuck the kids in, and pretend your life isn't on fire. But I didn't turn back. I pulled into that parking lot, and sure enough, there was her car. Parked neat and quiet, like she belonged there. I sat there for maybe 10 minutes, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. Part of me wanted to storm in, kick down the door, and drag her out by the arm. Part of me wanted to curl up in the driver's seat and cry until my chest caved in. In the end, I didn't do either. I just left. I couldn't face it. I drove back home in silence, staring at the road but not really seeing it, and when I got there, I went straight to bed. I laid there in the dark, waiting for the sound of the front door opening, waiting to hear her tiptoe into the house like she hadn't just torn my life apart. When she finally came home, I pretended to be asleep. I listened to her undress, brush her teeth, slide under the covers beside me. She smelled like a different soap, one that wasn't ours. My stomach churned. She reached over, like she always did, resting a hand on my shoulder. I wanted to shrug it off, but instead I lay perfectly still, like a corpse, breathing slow and even. The next morning, she made pancakes for the kids, humming softly like she was some sitcom mom, and I stood there in the kitchen doorway thinking, who the hell are you? Who have I been sharing my bed with all these years? I don't think I tasted a bite of that breakfast. I confronted her 2 nights later. I couldn't hold it in any longer. The kids were at my mom's, and she was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. I sat down across from her, my hands sweating, my heart racing so loud I could barely hear my own voice when I said, "Laura, who's Ryan?" I'll never forget the look on her face. First confusion, then shock, and finally something I can only describe as resignation. Like she knew the game was up. She didn't even try to deny it. Didn't try to tell me I was crazy or that I misunderstood. She just put her phone down and whispered, "You weren't supposed to find out." Those words cut deeper than any lie would. Not supposed to find out. As if the betrayal itself wasn't the issue, it was only a problem because I discovered it. I felt my chest cave in. I asked her how long it had been going on, and she told me the truth, or at least her version of it. Almost a year. A year of lies, of stolen hours, of me playing the fool in my own house. I asked her why. Why him? Why now? Why throw away everything we had built? She said she felt lonely, that we had drifted apart, that I was always tired and distant, that she didn't feel desired anymore. And maybe there's some truth in that. God knows I wasn't perfect. I carried the weight of work and bills and fatherhood on my shoulders, and maybe I stopped seeing her the way I used to. But damn it, marriage isn't about finding excitement when things get hard. It's about sticking through it. And she didn't. She chose to find comfort in someone else's arms instead of talking to me. We argued for hours. I shouted until my throat was raw. She cried until her face was blotchy and red. At one point she tried to reach for my hand, and I pulled away like her touch burned me. I couldn't look at her the same way anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with him, laughing, touching, giving pieces of herself that used to be mine. Eventually the anger gave way to silence. We just sat there, 2 broken people in a broken home, staring at the floor like strangers. I think that was the moment I realized there was no going back. Even if we tried to patch things up, even if she begged for forgiveness and promised it would never happen again, the trust was dead. And without trust, what do you have? Nothing but ashes. The weeks after that night are a blur. Some mornings I'd wake up and forget for a split second, and then the memory would hit me like a sledgehammer. I stopped eating properly, stopped sleeping more than a couple hours at a time. At work, guys on the crew asked if I was sick because I looked like hell. I couldn't tell them the truth. Not yet. How do you explain to people that the woman you built your life around just lit a match to it? Lavra and I tried to talk. She said she wanted to work things out, begged me to go to counseling, swore she'd cut him off for good, and maybe a better man than me could have tried. Maybe someone with more forgiveness in his heart could have sat across from her in a therapist's office and dug through the wreckage. But every time she touched my hand, every time I saw her face, I heard those words again. You weren't supposed to find out. I couldn't unhear them. I couldn't unsee her car parked outside that hotel. I couldn't unknow that she gave someone else what was meant for me. So I told her it was over. The night I said the words, she broke down sobbing, clinging to me like she was drowning. She said the kids would never forgive me for tearing apart the family. But I told her the truth. She tore it apart the moment she chose him over us. Telling the kids was the hardest thing I've ever done. My son sat stone-faced, trying to act tough, while my daughter cried and asked if it was her fault. I held her in my arms and promised her none of this was on her, that mommy and daddy just couldn't live together anymore. Later that night, when they were in bed, I sat in my truck in the driveway and cried harder than I ever have in my life. Not for Lavra, but for them. For the life I thought we were giving them, and for the fact that it would never be the same again. We filed for divorce. The papers went through quicker than I expected. The house went up for sale, and I moved into a small rented place across town. It's not much, just 2 bedrooms and a cramped kitchen, but it's mine. I kept their drawings on the fridge, their toys scattered in the living room when they come over on weekends. It feels empty when they're gone, but at least the emptiness is honest. It's been 6 months now. Some days are better than others. It started running in the mornings, trying to burn off the anger and sadness with sweat. I cook simple meals, watch old movies, slowly figure out who I am when I'm not someone's husband. I want pretend I'm healed. There are still nights when I wake up expecting to hear her breathing next to me, and the silence feels unbearable. But there are also mornings when the sun comes through the window, and I feel lighter. Like maybe this isn't the end of me, just the end of us. I don't know if he'll ever remarry, or even if I want to. But I know one thing for certain. I will never ignore my gut again. I will never put blind trust in someone who hasn't earned it. And I will teach my kids what loyalty and honesty really mean, even if it's just by showing up for them, every single time. So that's my story. My name is Michael, I'm 42, I swing a hammer for a living, and I survived my wife's betrayal. I'm still standing. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough.